I know that you spent quite a bit of time in Japan.
I did, yes. よろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。My name is Steve Kaufmann. Kind of got involved with the field of language learning. I learned about 9 languages during my professional career, but in the last 10, 12 years, I've learned another 10 or 11 languages. Right now, I'm learning Persian and Arabic. That'll be the 19th and 20th.
Oh, wow. I am curious. So did your interest for other cultures and other languages, did that start very early in your life, or is that something that kind of grew over time?
Growing up, I think like a lot of, I would say, North American kids, I wasn't really that interested in anything outside of my little sphere of activities, hockey, football. I was at McGill University. I had a professor who sort of turned me on to French.
Okay.
And we had French at school, and it was all about passing tests, and it was boring. But he sort of painted this picture of France, French movies, and that. And I got very interested, and as a consequence, I went to France where I studied. So then I discovered that I could learn to speak another language fluently. And then I joined the Canadian government in the diplomatic service, and they sent me to Hong Kong to learn Mandarin Chinese.
Oh.
Once you start studying a language, then you discover all the things that are behind that language.
Oh, yes.
Once you realize that you can learn languages, and it's fun to discover different worlds, different cultures, then it's something that you like to do.
It's definitely a snowball, isn't it? It's like a rabbit hole. Once you find out what's there, there's just more and more. It just reveals itself to you, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So, you are a polyglot, so you speak many, many languages, but many people are working on their first, maybe their second. What do you believe is the biggest misconception as far as truly grasping a new language?
Okay, we discover the language, right? And the language is there. And we have to discover it. Learning the grammar rules is not really a shortcut to discovering the language. We may get a bit of an overview of the language through an initial exposure to the grammar, but ultimately our brains learn the language, and our brains learn it gradually through exposure, and the brain starts to discover patterns. Once you've had sufficient exposure, you can then go back into the grammar. And now the explanations mean more to you. Up front, at the beginning, you just need a lot of exposure. And insofar as this plateau is concerned, I think we all experience that the first few months of discovering a new language are very exciting because what was noise now has some meaning.
Oh, yes.
And we're even able to say a few things that look at me. And then you discover that you haven't come very far.
Right.
That you have learned enough words to get yourself into trouble. You don't quite understand what people are saying to you. And you realize now that it's a long road to get to where you can feel comfortable in many situations. You have to stay engaged with the language, but therefore you have to find a way of doing it that's interesting and enjoyable.
Yes,
If it is just drudgery, you'll give up. It's gradual. There's no dramatic moments of, wow, all of a sudden I can speak the language.
Like you said, no shortcuts.
No shortcuts. But if you're enjoying it, then so what? It's not a race.
I've noticed that the more that we learn about a language, the more we realize we don't know anything about the language, really. I get questions, what's the best way to learn Japanese? I said to start. The best way to learn it is to start. And to just start small with the alphabet, with learning, of course, the basic grammar, but listen into new words and things like that. So I think you definitely hit the nail right on the head with that one.
There is a saying, I think it comes from the ancient Greeks or something, that the beginning is the job half done. So to support what you just said, get started, just do it.
Yes.
And then the second thing is, I think we have to trust our brains. The role of the brain is to learn. That's what the brain does. It learns. It has to learn. Because if we go through life and every situation we encounter is brand new every time, we wouldn't be able to function.
Right.
So the brain gets all this stimulus and gets this experience and starts to create rules for everything we do in life. And language is no different. So you have to give the brain enough exposure, as you said, enough stimulus, enough experience with the language, and the brain will learn a lot of it on its own as long as we feed it. But people sort of are in a hurry to say something. And that's understandable. We want to be able to, that's the goal, is to speak in the language. But until you can understand what other people are saying, you can't have a very meaningful conversation.
Indeed.
We should be less focused on what we are able to say and more focused on what we understand.
It's the comprehension. Yes.
Comprehension. Now, we agree on everything.
Oh, eye to eye.
There you go.
Next question.
Yes.
How would you define fluency in your own words?
Fluency is the ability to speak comfortably on a variety of subjects in a way that the person you're speaking with, typically a native speaker, also feels comfortable. It doesn't mean that you won't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that you don't have an accent. You have an accent. I have an accent on all the languages. Even the languages that I speak very well, I have an accent. No one mistakes me for a native speaker.
Darn.
Maybe for like 30 seconds, but max, you know. It might be some very basic things that you'll make mistakes or you won't remember. None of that matters. But you're able to sit in a meeting. Let's say you're having a coffee with 3 or 4 native speakers of that language, and the conversation is flying in all different directions. You can jump in there and talk whenever you want. You understand what they're saying. You speak with mistakes. They don't because they're native speakers. That's fluency. That's not the same as mastery. There are levels beyond fluency.
So this is our last English question.
Okay.
And this is, how has being a polyglot changed your view of the world, people in general, and cultures? How has having this handle on many different languages and seeing, I think, many different perspectives, it's like different lenses, right?
Right.
How has that influenced your way of viewing people?
If you speak the language, those people come alive. You have a better sense of their humanity, of them as people. You enter into their world. And of course, typically when I learn a language, I like to read about their history. I read about their history in their language. You just have a three-dimensional sense of who they are.
Yes.
And all those people are expressions of our common humanity. So you are experiencing a range of sort of ways of being a human being.
And I do think that learning new languages, even just learning one new language, it humanizes the people of that culture.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for that.
Not at all.
じゃあ、日本語の部分、始めましょう。
はい、お願いします。お願いします。
よろしくお願いします。今、ドキドキしちゃう。
あ、ですか。
でも本当に日本語すごく上手ですね、本当に。
いや、逆に。
いやとんでもない。はい。一番は、カウフマンさんの一番好きな日本料理は何でしょうか？
寿司で言えば、ウニ。そうですね、焼き魚ですね、いろんな魚。
焼き魚。
まあしかし、いろいろですよ。いろいろですよ。嫌いなものはないですよ。言えば。
あ、そうなんだ。そんなに好き嫌いじゃない。
納豆も含めて嫌いなものはない。
そうですね。でもそれはさすがね。日本の料理はね、味だけじゃなくて、見方、なんかアレンジメントがバッチリだと思います。
そうですね。
2番ですね。外人さんは日本について一番誤解してしまうことは何だと思いますか？
場合によってですね、だからそれを違うから人間として違うわけじゃないけれども、その文化として違うんです。
3番ですね。習った言語の中で日本語の難しさはね、何位ぐらいだと思いますか？
日本語を勉強する前に中国語を勉強しました。
そうですね。
だから漢字は読めました、大体。中国語を勉強した時に、
なるほどね。
3000か4000ぐらいの漢字は覚えたというか読めましたよね。
おー、すごい。
そういう意味で、日本語はそれほど難しくなかった。ゼロからスタートすればですね、中国語も知らない、例えば英語しか話せない人にとってはですね、多分日本語は難しい。
そうだと言われています。じゃあありがとうございます。4番目。日本の理想な旅行をする季節はどれだと思いますか？秋か。
秋がいいと思います。
おー、珍しい。なぜでしょう？
というのはね、秋か春ですよね。夏が暑すぎるんですよね。そうで、冬は寒くてね、冷たいわけですよ。風呂に入ればいいけどね。だけども、それに比べて、秋か春はもう桜が咲いたりとか、そういうのもいいし。そうですね。
本当にそれぞれですね。じゃあ、日本で何の県にいたことありますか？
多分 ほとんど。
ほとんど。
長野県も行きましたよ。スキーにも行きましたし。
いいな私もいつか全部行ってみたいと思うけどね。以上になります。はい。Thank you very much.
Okay.
That was the last one.
That was fun.
Yeah, thank you. I very much so enjoyed it.
Yes.
Would you mind explaining a bit about LingQ and what you do there?
So LingQ is a language learning platform. We have in the libraries for like 35 languages. We have audio and text content to get you started. But then, as we discussed at the beginning, to maintain your interest, you need to bring in things that are interesting to you. So it's a comfortable place to learn, to take advantage of the resources that are on the internet today and, stay on task, which is the key thing, language.
For our viewers today, there's actually a promotional offer, 35% off a 1-year premium subscription. So I'll leave the link in the description below. But thank you very much. You are truly an inspiration.
And my compliments on your Japanese.
Oh, thank
truly
you so
outstanding.
much.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
Absolutely outstanding.
That means so much coming from you. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Well, have a great rest of your 2020, and maybe we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, and same to you.
Alrighty.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye.